Hey gang, it's your boy, and welcome to a very special two-part episode of my retro gaming history, the handhelds. To kick off this very special video, let's go back to the year 1989, when most of my friends had broken into handheld gaming with the prolific Nintendo Game Boy. My family shopped at Sears, and this amazing little battery drainer was in every new catalog since its release mid-1989, and after only 6 months of nagging, I had my own. Before the Game Boy came into my life, the 8-hour car trip every summer vacation to visit family was the definition of torture when I was 10 years old, having to share the back seat of the car with my little sister. However, once I had this portable wonder, I was more invested in this annual trip than ever before. Charging multiple sets of batteries and acquiring new games to beat on the way had me actually looking forward to the journey. Not to mention the expectation of head-to-head play with my cousin to challenge each other in Tetris's 2-player mode. Aside from its 4 shades of olive display, my only gripe about it back then was the lack of a backlit screen, which wasn't really a thing at the time, aside from the uber expensive NEC Turbo Express, which I shamelessly lusted over, and the yet to be released Sega Game Gear and Atari Lynx 2. That issue was solved relatively easily with the purchase of Newbie's Game Light shortly thereafter, which fixed the problem, but unfortunately doubled the battery consumption of the Game Boy when in use. It was a necessity, nonetheless, for nighttime gaming and sleepovers. Another downside to the Game Boy was its popularity, and by that, I mean it was so damn popular that it was the only time a video game system was stolen from me. In fact, the cheeky little bastard who took it and brought it back to school the next day accused me of originally stealing it from him when confronted by a teacher and I in the schoolyard. Had I not carved my initials onto the inside of the battery cover, I could have lost it altogether. Perhaps it was that situation that led me to ultimately dismantle my Game Boy and paint it black, a color which wasn't available at the time. Fortunately, my version was early enough to be held together with Phillips screws instead of the usual tri-wings. Although I liked the way it looked in black, I completely regretted this paint job after realizing the game light would no longer attach without destroying the paint job bit by bit. I got quite good at taking it apart and putting it back together once I removed the paint and consequently the textured surface of the plastic with paint thinner. I still achieved the results I was looking for though, as no one else had a Game Boy with a dull gray finish and no button labels whatsoever. I also constructed a mini arcade enclosure for it, complete with a joystick and button panel, which actually worked, long enough for me to get bored of using it. Aside from my love of modifying the little off-white entertainment system, like most Nintendo products, my favorite aspect of the games made for it was the music. The sounds that came out of that tiny stereo down-mixed speaker and through the earbuds while playing were damn near perfect for each portable experience I had. And now, to round out this video, let's listen to some of that music as I highlight a few of the games I owned for the Game Boy. Tetris. Now Tetris is Tetris. Once you beat it, there's really only 2-player mode to look forward to. Most Game Boy owners I knew had it, and this port did have some great music. This Tetris is still my favorite version of any platform. Super Mario Land was the first cartridge I got, aside from Tetris, which was the pack-in game. I was a huge Mario fan at this point, and I was very excited to see how he would perform on the little dot matrix screen. Needless to say, my expectations about how he would move and sound in the game were subverted. The music was pretty good, with some really catchy tunes. the sound effects almost put me off right away. I couldn't understand why they'd changed the power-up sound to this, or the death sound to this, or the invincibility music to this. Was it really that hard to put in the sounds that Mario titles were known for? The mechanics for fire flowers were also changed to a bouncing ball, and the Koopa Turtle shells didn't behave the way you'd expect. Also, there were more vehicle levels here than in any other Mario platformer. It reminded me of Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES, a game that started out as another game, but got repurposed for Nintendo's release schedule. Other than that, it's a good first attempt on the Game Boy, and even though they fixed a lot of these discrepancies in later releases, I still find myself coming back to this version when I feel like playing Mario on the Game Boy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan wasn't a great game, and only got challenging in the last level. The music again was great for a TMNT game, and the graphics were very well done, which I'm sure is what most fans of the show were really looking for. And I assume it sold very well, but it had little replay value for me. The Final Fantasy Legend was the best game for passing time on those long summer car trips. Like so much of what Nintendo did for North American titles, this game was originally released in Japan as Warrior in the Tower of the Spirit World Saga, but was tied to the Final Fantasy series for marketing purposes. For the most part, it fit in with the spirit of the Final Fantasy family, but with lots of notable differences. The battle system had a streamlined presentation with fewer choices, while still presenting some pretty sweet graphics for the monsters. With the option to buy hit points, strength, and agility stats, this game could be very farming intensive. But it forced you to strike a balance, because you could deplete your equipment prematurely due to weapons and spells having a finite lifespan. It's the kind of game that forced you to buy your way to the next level with hard-earned GP. And even though each character had a limited number of resurrection hearts, if you really wanted to keep your favorites around, you could buy another heart for an insane amount of gold. The classes for characters were humans and mutants, available in both genders, and monsters, which you could pick up at guilds on each level. The humans were more physical and required the most gold to keep up. The mutants had natural spells that came and went as they were used, and the monsters could evolve into other types by eating the flesh of defeated monsters. The story was a quest for paradise at the top of the tower, centered in each of the 4 levels, which ultimately put you face to face with the creator of the world at the very top. I completed it many times. In my opinion, it definitely was a great RPG title for the Game Boy. Dr. Mario was another great puzzle game with catchy music, but much like Tetris, was more enjoyable in 2-player mode. Nintendo did a great job here of porting a game heavily reliant on color matching to the little spinach-colored screen.
Oh, Popeye!
Kirby's Dream Land was a surprise favorite of mine. It was easy to convince my mom to buy it for me because it seemed so wholesome and violence-free, despite the fact that you could literally hoover up baddies and spit them out as ammo, or digest them if you chose to. The music was so catchy and upbeat, and the little baddies you decimated were all happy and smiley as you annihilated them and turned them into cannon fodder to in turn destroy their lovable friends. Beating the game the first time was a cakewalk, and I was a little disheartened to complete it in under 30 minutes. But it was the hard mode afterward that presented the challenge I was looking for. The gameplay went from super easy to crazy difficult. The boss fights you were laughing at the first time around would bring you to the verge of mental breakdown in hard mode. How could something so cute and upbeat become so terrifying? Their smiling, joyous faces became hideous and horrifying as they tore strip after strip out of your cartoon hide. So much fun, you guys. Double Dragon on the Game Boy was straight up awesome. The fighting difficulty was turned way down though, and the majority of the bad guys could be taken care of with just 4 button presses. The music, the graphics, and the level design of the NES port was all there, and was a fantastic portable rendition. F1 Race was a novel racing game that had decent graphics and Mario cameos, but the excitement kind of ran out of fuel for me once the opportunity for 4-player multiplayer on the included adapter dried up. Not a bad game, but I traded it a few months after I got it for the next one, Mega Man: Dr. Wily's Revenge. This was a good on-the-go version of the notoriously hard platformer, and was the first of its series on the Game Boy. It only had 4 levels, but they were more than difficult enough to make up for the scale. So freaking hard. Lastly, Battletoads. The cartridge in heavy rotation on my Game Boy, and I seldom left it at home. Everything that made the NES game great was here. From the cartoonish fighting animations to the Dark Queen's massive memories, except the turbo tunnel. That nightmare got replaced with a rocket ride through spiked walls and a leisurely jet ski trip. This game's most frustrating level was a chase through a giant worm by an out-of-control kidney stone, which required flawless execution. Otherwise, you quickly became a toad pancake. The difficulty for fighting was toned down in this release a bit, and the addition of an axe made the first level a walk in the park. This game took me several weeks to beat, because of its tricky platforming and, at times, sketchy hit detection. But I never got bored or too frustrated. Those fresh beats and the background music certainly helped. Well, gang, I was going to cover all the handheld consoles I owned, but I guess I just had too much to say about the technically inferior, but wildly entertaining and popular Nintendo Game Boy. So join me for the next episode, where I finish off this leg of the series. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Game Boy games were, or if you'd like to see playthroughs of any of the games I mentioned here. Until then, I've been your boy at D-Pad Gaming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.